Hey guys, welcome to the Live Big, Find Your Magic podcast. I am super excited to share my guest with you today. I have known Kate for a couple years now. Thank you, Kate, for joining us on this podcast. I can't wait for you to share your story. The little backstory on how I met Kate is Kate was a part of my social media program. And one of the nicest things, actually the best thing about the social media program are these Zoom calls that we would have with those that were in the program. Because for me, it wasn't necessarily about the program. It was about the people that were in the program and really getting to know them and know their business and what their goals were and things like that. But the bonus was that I really got to know them as my friends. And so I was really excited to have Kate on here because I love her story outside of, her business story is great, but outside of the business story, her life story is great. And I find that it fits this podcast so well. It's, she's living big and finding the magic every day. I know she is because I watch it and I've seen it and I've heard it. And I hope that she feels the same way, but I know a lot of us are like, well, it's not really that magical, but I see it and I want people to hear it. So I'm being selfish and saying that you have a very wonderful story that I think people, would really enjoy hearing. So thank you, Kate, for joining me.
Well, thank you for those kind words.
Oh, well, I only speak the truth. Okay, I'm going to ask you 3 icebreaking questions that are very easy to answer. I promise. Okay, I've never steered you wrong, right?
Right.
All right. Okay, so what brings you joy? And I'm gonna actually add a little piece to that. Instead of what brings you joy in life, what brought you joy this week? Name one thing. First thing that comes to mind. What brought you joy this week?
The project we're working on.
Okay.
So we do Christmas real big in my house. 9 trees, lots of decoration, themes, the whole 9 yards. And so needless to say, I have a boatload of Christmas decorations, which is taking up a whole closet in my office that I need now for my business.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks ago, my husband Chris and I actually cut through a wall into the crawl space, and we are making a Christmas trolley. So basically all of the tubs of Christmas ornaments sit on these little carts that are on a track that I can get to without having to climb back into the attic. And so Chris has been making carts, and we've named them after reindeer. So now they all have names, and it's fun when we work on projects like this.
Yeah. I can see why that would bring you joy. And you shared those pictures with me and the video with me. And I totally agree that it's brilliant and it would bring me joy as well. So that's definitely a good answer. I kind of expected you to say that. So that's good. Okay. So thank you for sharing. And then we'll share later. We're going to share a little bit about, a lot about your life with Chris and your Christmas life and those things. So, okay. So now the second question is, do you believe that everyone has a purpose in life? There's no wrong or right answer on this one. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think there's a, ultimate purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to me, the purpose is, be happy and bring happiness.
Okay.
And that looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone, I can't sing and make people happy. Trust me, that does not make people happy.
Neither can I.
But, I can make things. I can, crafts are my thing. And so those bring people happiness. And so, I think what makes you happy and what makes other people happy, that's a purpose.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's not like a higher purpose. It's just,
it's a simple, I love the simplicity of that, actually. That's actually probably the simplest answer I've heard, and it makes complete sense. I love it. Perfect.
Be happy and bring happy.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so this question is it kind of throws people off a little bit, but it's still easy to answer. And you'll get why I'm asking this question, because you know me. What is your favorite thing about human connection? Like, this is my jam. I love to connect with humans. And I'm just curious, what is your favorite thing about that, about connecting with humans or human connection? What would you say?
So I don't know how many years ago, I did a strength finder team building activity with my team.
Yep.
And one of my strengths is individualization. And I think that's, for me, the coolest thing is being able to sit down with a total stranger and figure out how we're connected. So great example, I was at an estate sale. I drove an ungodly number of hours to get there. I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the guy who came next was sitting beside me, and he wasn't really talking a whole lot, but he mentioned to the guy behind him that his mom lived in North Carolina. So I was like, oh, where in North Carolina? He's like, Franklin. I'm like, oh, well, I grew up in Franklin, went to Franklin High School. And then all of a sudden, all these things that we can talk about, and the growth and the, the way it used to be, and the first McDonald's. And to me, that's fun, is finding that connection, that true connection with people.
That leads into
asking those questions.
Yeah, that leads into, so you know the questions to ask that will lead into like the next bit of the conversation, and then more connection, right? Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a skill I think that not everybody has. I mean, I would not have said that I had a skill like that 15 years ago. I would say that now I do, but even that I've had to recognize that, it's not something you would say, oh no, but now I recognize that now. And why I love human connection so much as well. So I'm glad you shared that. Okay, so let's dig into your story. I kind of shared with Kate a little bit before we started recording of what I felt that what I wanted people to hear about her life and her story, and why I feel like she knows how to find the magic in life. So Kate, share your backstory and about your life and your life with Chris, and what your hobbies are that have turned into a business and things like that, so that people can be inspired in a different. This is what I love. It's like everybody's story is so different. So I would love for you to share your story.
Okay. So backstory. I'm an engineer by education. Applied math was my thing in college, and did none of that when I graduated. I actually got into fundraising, and I figured everyone is always going to need money, so fundraisers will always be in demand. And so I raised money for schools, colleges, universities for 25 years, and got married, and it wasn't a good thing. It was hard to get through. It took a long time for me to get out, and work was kind of my safe space during that time. And when I was getting out, part of the getting out was having a job and a place to go to. And so I started, my new life in Clemson, and, just spent some time finding myself again, because I had really lost who I was. And, about a year and a half into it, my divorce was final, and I thought, okay, well, now I can finally think about dating again. And I was fundraising for a school, and was at a tailgate And I was talking with one of my prospects and his wife, and his wife and I found out this connection that we had. She had a connection with a former board chair of mine from 10 years ago from when she was in high school. And so all of a sudden I was her best friend. And I said, so I think I'm ready to start dating again. And so if you know any nice, normal single guys, let me know. And she said, well, what about Chris? And I said, well, what about Chris? And she said, well, he has this really good job with an international company. He travels a lot. He has a dog named Honey Mustard. That's his F-150 over there, but he drives a Lexus during the week. And that's him.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how Chris and I met.
At a tailgate.
Yep. And so, the joke in the family is that I got the gift and I got the guy. So it was a win-win situation.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where we fight about geometry of all things. We're both engineers. So we have had some rip-roaring fights about geometry. Because even though we're engineers, we're different types of engineers. So even though we come to the same answer, it's from completely different directions.
That's amazing.
So, but he's been willing to, get on board with some of my crazy plans. When I was single, my biggest fear was I started a new job 2 weeks before the market crashed in 2008. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden the market crashed. I had a new house, I had a new mortgage, I had a new job. I was the last person hired. Mm-hmm. And so my big fear was, how am I going to pay for this house if I don't have a job?
Right.
And so I worked out this 8-year plan of how I'm going to pay my house off. So that if something like this were to happen, mm-hmm. I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. Mm-hmm. So because then I could get a job wherever and pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so when Chris and I started dating, I told him, I said, this is where a good chunk of my paycheck goes. Yeah. And love you lots, but I'm not going to give up on this plan because you just never know.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, that's crazy, or, you don't have to, he's like, okay, that sounds like a plan. Let's do it. And so he bought into it. Yeah, check for that.
Check that one off. Yeah.
And the great thing is 3 years ago, we finished that plan.
Oh my gosh, that's so great.
Enabled us to get out of the city. We moved out of Atlanta and we moved back to a small town. Mm-hmm. And I do fundraising consulting. Mm-hmm. Is my real job. And Chris can work from home. And so we're here. We live in a Sears and Roebuck kit house that was brought in on the train in 1935.
That's amazing.
That has been redone prior to me, thank goodness. Uh-huh. But we have, built a workshop. We have built a party deck. We have a mid-century modern space where Chris has his office.
Yeah.
So there are always projects going on.
Yeah. You're the creative engineers. Super creative. Yeah. Super creative. Like, I love when you send me your Christmas stuff and your projects, and the fact that he's totally on board. And I mean, he seems to have fun with it, right?
He does. Right? He does.
So I get the fact that he's on board with your craziness, but he's having fun too, which I think is just so brilliant. So share a little bit about how you got into, doing the crafting thing and getting into Christmas and the mid-century modern stuff. I learned all of that stuff in the last year because of you, because I didn't know any of this stuff. So share with us like how you got into that and why that brings you so much joy. I love it.
So the engineering is definitely from my dad. And the artsy creative is definitely from my mom. And so my grandmother, my mom's mom, did beautiful needlework. And I still have the Snow White and Seven Dwarf wall hanging that I got when I was born. It's actually hanging in our living room.
Wow. Wow.
And mom did embroidery, but she also sewed, and she had the greenest of green thumbs, which I didn't know I had until much, much later in life. But she was the one who really kind of pushed that creative and forced me to be creative. I was an only child. And so I didn't have brothers and sisters to keep me busy.
Right.
And so I would go to her and say, what can I do? And she's like, well, go make this or make that or make something.
Oh.
And so that kind of, got my mind, got my imagination.
Yeah. So at an early age, you were creating things.
I was making, definitely.
Yeah.
And, Christmas is kind of funny because my mom wasn't a huge decorator at Christmas.
Okay.
And, when I was off on my own, in that first marriage, we started a Christmas party, an annual Christmas party. And we would invite our friends and we would invite people from both jobs. And so it was really just a neat kind of eclectic mix of people. I would invite some of my donors, some of my trustees, some of the teachers that I worked with, my hairdresser, just a really kind of neat conglomeration. And from there, I would make the cards, the invitations. And I would always say, I make 80 and I make only 80. And so that's as many people as we can invite. And so if you don't show up for a couple of years running, you can get bumped
off the list
because we're always meeting new people. And so as that party grew, my Christmas decorating grew. And then, there was a Clemson tree and a snowman tree and a memory tree and a tree that was, the tree of the theme of the party. And so
that's amazing.
Now we have a mid-century tree.
Yeah. And so you would hand make the cards?
Handmade.
Oh my gosh. Hand make the cards, 80 cards.
Yep.
That was your limit. You'd hand make them. And if you didn't, so were there people that didn't show up for a couple years and you booted them?
I did.
You were a tough cookie with your cards. You wanted people to appreciate it, right?
Well, 80 is 80. And
I think that's amazing. So, so as you moved forward, did you still continue that tradition of the Christmas party?
Yep. And so the nice thing with moving from Charlotte to small town to Atlanta and back, you get to reuse some of the themes because the invite list is totally different. And especially the ones that Chris likes. So Chris loved the Grinch.
Okay.
We did a Grinch theme one year.
Yes.
And so did it twice.
Yes.
So that makes
it all out with the theme.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures. Yes. All out with the theme. So every year is a different theme. And how far in advance do you guys choose what the theme is?
So I usually have 2 or 3 themes kind of percolating in the back of my mind. And usually when we're decorating for one, we're settling on another because it helps me buy cheap
stuff for the next. Yeah. Wow. So this is like plan in advance stuff.
Yeah.
And you make all of these decor. I mean, you buy.
I do.
You buy some, but you make a lot of them handmade.
Yeah, I do. I do.
And how far? Okay, so then how far in advance? Let's just say 2022 Christmas. How far in advance are you making? How far in advance have you come up with a theme? And then are you making things for Christmas 2022?
So right now the theme is set to be snowflakes.
Okay.
Not snowmen. We've been there, done that. So this is snowflakes.
Okay.
And Chris isn't totally sold on it yet. Okay. So we're still negotiating. But the cards will get made in October. Okay. Because the party typically is the first or second weekend in December. So the cards will go out right before Christmas, right before Thanksgiving. Or 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. You've got it all planned out. That's amazing.
And the decorations don't get started nearly soon enough because I'm always racing.
Right. But that's okay. That's okay. You still have time. Now you're a pro, obviously, because you've been doing it for so many years that you know how long things take you. And do you have all the ideas of the decorations well in advance? So you already have the ideas.
I have Pinterest boards for at least a dozen themes going right now.
Yes. Wow. And then, so that led you into, obviously, when we met, you wanted to share those themes with people because it's easier. Like for me, it would be easy to say, okay, can you tell me, I want the Grinch theme this year. What do I need? Right.
Yep.
That's really
Yep.
kind of where we had met, talking about that. Now, are you still doing that? Or I know that you talked about your booths during Christmas. So what are you doing now with your amazing talent and skill that I have not even close to?
So the crafty side of things has kind of, I do it for myself, I do it for family, friends. But I've always said, I don't want to get into the business of having to make 300 whatevers to be able
Grinch arms.
To be able to, have a business. And so I've kind of put that to the side because I love all things vintage. And so not necessarily antique. So antique is over 100 years old.
Okay.
Vintage is more in that sweet spot, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Okay. I've learned something new today.
So, that kind of mid-century.
Yeah.
Modern is definitely one of the mid-century, but that kind of time frame is what I love.
Yeah.
And so I bought it a lot for us. And then Chris said, we have too much. And so I said, okay, well then I'll start selling it.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And so in March, I started the Vintage Tiger and have a booth at a market in Greenville and have really enjoyed it and have learned a lot, which is also something that, I think I need in what I do is just being able to learn.
Yeah.
I did a blog for a while, so learning how to set that up and design and, and all that. The learning was fun. The doing was not me. Remember, I'm a math major. I'm not an English major. So writing every week.
Right. Putting
really
it together was one thing, is actually,
Yeah. So, but, learning about the different Christmas ornaments and that the unsilvered Christmas ornaments with the cardboard caps that are really not easy to find these days were made in World War II because all the metal was going to the war effort. And so that's why you have the cardboard caps and the unsilvered ornaments. It's just really interesting.
It totally is.
And, the light green glass that you see from the late 1800s, early 1900s, when you stick it under a black light, it glows because it really does have a little bit of uranium in it. And, it's just that's things like that. Yeah. Useless facts, I guess.
They're not useless. They're clearly not useless to you, but there are plenty of people that do. Yeah.
It tells a story about the piece. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun to learn about.
Right. Right. And you're obviously you're sharing your knowledge right here. So do you share that knowledge with people currently, or?
I try and share a little bit of it when I tag items for the booth in terms of where it's from, the year. I as little as possible, use the word vintage on my tag. Okay. Because obviously my booth is at a vintage market, so one would hope that I'm selling vintage stuff. Yeah. But can I narrow it down to at least a decade, or if not a year, and tell a little bit about, what it is and why it's that way. Right. So the market owner says my tags are too big, but it gives me some space to at least tell a little bit about.
Yeah. I think that the piece itself becomes something more if there's a story behind it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would personally, if I picked something up and it had a story based on this piece, I would want that piece even more. You know, it would, and then it's like, and then we pass along the stories. Did you
Right.
know that this piece, so you're gifting them with something that's like a bonus to
Right.
to the actual piece itself. I find this so fascinating because it's so far out of my daily life, but I will say that I grew up in a very similar household. Not necessarily my mom's household, but my grandparents. My grandmother was a porcelain doll maker.
Oh, wow.
And her house was full of things, you know. I mean, she was brilliant in creating porcelain dolls. It's lost its you know, magic over all these years, but I remember growing up as a kid, and she'd had, you know, she had her kiln, and she would have these molds, and she would
Wow.
pour the molds, and they would come out of the kiln, and the ones that were like the ones she was going to throw away, she would give us with our little scalpel, and we would take off the extra, you know, porcelain just to play around with. And that was like our toy when we were at our house. We would play with these porcelain dolls, and then she would hand paint them and make the wigs and hand sew the dresses and the bonnets. And it's really a lost art. And I remember growing up around that and just being surrounded by things like that. My grandpa had made this dollhouse that was probably this tall, and they had miniatures that they made, and it was just so handcrafted. So I can appreciate what you do, even though it's not something like, you know, I mean, if you saw my Christmas tree, it was very generic. There was zero theme going on there, but I can really appreciate this. And I think that I don't know, maybe there's a comeback. Maybe we start to appreciate these things more and more, right? Because I will say that just in general, we really have started to appreciate things more after these last couple of years. The little things, right? So something like that, I see, maybe we just have this wave. We're going to bring back this stuff. We're going to make this very popular.
Well,
we're going to make this trend setting again.
Well, and I think I've seen it just in my buying in the past year. You know, mid-century modern is very, very trendy right now. Everyone keeps saying it's going to fall out of style, but I haven't seen it yet. You know, and Pyrex, of all things, Pyrex dishes. If you get some of the older sets, you know, the primary colored mixing bowls that were nesting.
I remember those.
Oh, you know, $100 easy for the set right now.
Wow.
It's crazy.
See, I think that we're going back to appreciating the things that were created years and years and years ago that still are, you know, around and good quality. And
that's the thing. They're good quality.
Yeah. And they're memorable. I mean, I have really, really fond memories of being surrounded in the kitchen with those things. So I think that a lot of us, you know, kind of miss those times maybe and remember those fond memories. And so that's probably part of the reason why they're so much more valuable. Not, I mean, yes, they're good quality, but I think that attaching the story and the memories to it adds a whole nother layer. I love this. This is not where the conversation I was expecting to go, but I'm like so enjoying this. This is the best thing about this podcast, is that I just want people to tell their stories, mainly for selfish reasons, but I want people to hear this. And I'm just so fascinated.
Well, and there's so many different things. So Chris will go with me on buying trips. Every now and then. But it's so funny to go with him because we look at completely different things. So he's always looking at like the vintage tools and the gadgets and the, so he'll come up with this, level from, the 1920s and, or, something else, or a camera.
Yeah.
And that's just not where my eye goes normally.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to go with him just to see what sparks his interest.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a way for you to really appreciate it together, but not necessarily in the same exact way.
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing.
Yeah. And so now he'll point out things that he knows I'm looking for, and I'll do the same, for him. So it is kind of fun to go together, because there's certain places where you just can't see everything.
Yeah. You guys have so much fun. I just love you guys. I adore you guys so much. I swear. And I want everybody to see your Christmas trolley. Because then they'll be like, hey, wait, I need one of those. Because we do have tons of decoration. I know I just put up all mine. I can't even imagine what you have. And mine is very minimal now.
Yeah. So it's, with Chris, he's so funny because he loves a project, and he likes to be able to see the plan. But there have been things that I have brought home and he has said, Kate, what are you going to do with that? And every time he says, okay, I like it, didn't see it.
He figured it out, and now he sees it.
So I've got a couple of projects out in the backyard. One of them that has been sitting there for too long that I'm bound and determined to get to this spring. That he has been like, there is no way I'm gonna like this when it's done. So we will
and
see.
He will, he will. Okay. Well, I appreciate the fact that you tell this is just so, it's just so enjoyable. Your story. I want people to see your things, and where can they find whatever you've got out there now? I know you've got booths, and you're, it's not necessarily the same as it was, but can people find what we're talking about somewhere out there in the universe?
Yep, thevintagetiger.com.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the show notes, so people need to go to that and see what we're talking about.
Don't forget the Vintage Tiger.
Thevintagetiger.com. Okay, thevintagetiger.com. Got it. All right, and so we can see what we're talking about here, and the joy that it brings you. And is Chris in any of these pictures?
I think he's in a few of them.
Okay.
When we were building our party shed.
See the man behind the myth. Now, are you still tailgating?
We are.
Yes,
we are. I mean, football
part of your life.
Yeah, I mean,
we wore orange today for you.
That's right. So first date, we met at a tailgate. Our first date was a tailgate. We got married at halftime of a football game. So it's what we do.
Yeah, and, I love it. It's just so joyful, just you just pick out the fun things in life and that you both enjoy. And I don't know, I think it's an inspiration for a lot of people who feel like they don't necessarily have an exciting life. Like, you just make the excitement, right? You make it yourself.
Well, and the tailgate, allows us to bring people into that realm that, have never been, or they haven't been in a long time.
Right.
And so, every week, we have different friends, different family coming, staying, going to the tailgate. We always say tailgating in the South is its own experience.
Yeah, I get that just from seeing you guys.
So it's something that we like to share.
Yeah.
And so, it's fun for us to see it through other people's eyes.
Oh, right.
We met this one group. We played Notre Dame 5 years ago. It's been a while. And pouring down rain. I mean, they were expecting a monsoon. And so we put up our big tent, and we surrounded it with, walls, and we put down hay, and we had our bar there and our TV. And these two Notre Dame fans, bless their hearts, they look like drowned rats. And so we invited them in, and they were really nervous. And we're like, have a beer, have some food. And they're like, really? I'm like, it's at the end of the day, it's a game.
Yeah, exactly.
And so come on in, just enjoy.
Right.
And so we like to do that too.
Yeah.
Is make the opposing team, with a few exceptions, feel welcome.
Right. You have boundaries. You have to draw the line somewhere.
Chris has limits. Chris's limits are more defined than mine.
Right. But when it's pouring rain, you kind of have to budge a little bit.
Yeah. So, but that's just part of the fun is letting people enjoy that atmosphere for a day.
Yeah, I love it. One of these days I'm gonna come out there.
You should.
I know, I'm going to. I would love that. I've
never get to Atlanta and we'll get you the rest of the way.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Game on. No pun intended.
And you have something to wear.
I do have something to wear. Yes.
There you go. There you
go.
The
right colors.
One really quick story about wearing orange. When I first started working here, my mom was super excited that I was going to the football games, and she's like, "Oh, it's on TV this week. I'll look for you. What will you be wearing?" And I said, "Well, I'll be the one wearing orange, Mom." And she's like, "Oh, okay, I'll look for you." Oh. And after the game, she's like, "There were an awful lot of people wearing orange. I couldn't find you."
I was right there, and you saw me. I promise you saw me.
So that was always the thing that Mom, I would tell Mom, when it was a football weekend, "Look for me. I'll be the one wearing orange."
I love it. Whenever I do see orange, I do think of you, actually. So you've imprinted that in my brain. Okay, guys. So thank you, Kate, again, for sharing this. This has just been so enjoyable. I can't wait for people to listen to this and smile and just feel good about themselves, right? So I'm going to share Kate's, where you can find Kate in the show notes so that you can see. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit subscribe so you can see when I launch a new podcast. Like there are a bunch coming out. If you're listening to this on one of the podcast platforms, please feel free to subscribe, obviously, and review. And I will see you in the next podcast, guys. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Bye.